What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the CBB Yapper. Of course, I had to throw my Duke jersey back on here after that huge win yesterday, but for today's episode, we're going to recap this awesome and loaded weekend of college basketball that just took place here. We'll go over who I think are the actual contenders to cut down the nets in April, and then we'll end it with, of course, some more games to watch between now and Thursday's episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off on Friday night, I had pointed out that VCU and St. Louis game, and I had mostly pointed this one out just to get another eye on St. Louis, as they're probably the second best mid-major this year behind Gonzaga and are most likely going to be getting an at-large bid to the tournament this year. So wanted to get another look at them against the second best team in their conference, which is VCU. And for the start of this one, pretty much the first 30 minutes of this one, St. Louis really had me worried here. They started off really rough, especially from the field, but even from three as well. They missed their first 7 3-point attempts, and VCU, on the other hand, was pretty much lights out, especially from deep. They only shot 14 of 33 from the field in the first half, which isn't anything crazy, but they shot a ridiculous 8 of 15 from deep in the first half as well, which contributed to them pushing out the lead like they did to end the first half. The Rams then shot an abysmal 7 of 31 in the second half and 1 of 14 from deep, which really contributed to them losing this game and kind of blowing this one at the end. Despite their first half struggles, though, the Billikens absolutely lit it up in the second half, putting up a ridiculous 55-point half and shooting 7 of 12 from deep. St. Louis is just a team that I think really just continues to impress me every time I see them. I don't really think that they're an elite team, but whatever team pulls them in the first round is not going to be in for a fun night. I certainly would not want to see this team in the first round. They are definitely very good and probably are going to be a little bit underseeded in terms of how good they are. But after dropping a really tough one to Rhode Island, I thought this was a really impressive win to bounce back here and potentially increase their chances at solidifying that at-large bid here. As for VCU, though, they certainly are going to need to win the A10 tournament in order to make March Madness here. I think that's their only chance of sneaking into the tournament here at the end of the year. St. Louis is in a completely different boat. They just need to lock in here down the stretch, and I do think that they're going to get an at-large bid to March Madness. All they have to do is just avoid any other blunders here towards the end of the year and avoid losing to any of these lesser teams like VCU. Even though VCU is the second best team in the A10, I really don't think they should be competing with a team like St. Louis. Staying on Friday night, I had pointed out that Purdue and Indiana game, and on my Thursday episode, I had said that if Indiana wants any chance to pull this one off, they're going to most likely need to put up at least 80 points, and even then, that might not be enough to pull this one off at Purdue. And it seems like that take was pretty spot on here. Purdue came out and just absolutely lit them up, shooting 10 of 18 from deep and almost 65% as a team from the field. Just a really impressive clip from Purdue as a team, and they pretty much got scoring from everyone who played minutes that night. Fletcher and Lawyer were doing their thing all night per usual, but one of the players that has kind of stood out for me the last two games that I've watched Purdue in is this Meyer kid. I just think both of their last games that I've watched, he has really provided them some solid minutes, especially with the limited time that he's been given on the floor. I just really think that with Smith and Lawyer probably leaving after this season, I think that they have another good guard that can fill in and certainly take over the reins of that backcourt next year. However, when Purdue plays like that, I just really think they're extremely tough to beat. The problem is you just never know what Purdue team is going to show up on a given night. On Friday night, though, that was the version that is a potential contender and a legit team that could give a lot of teams problems here in March. We'll talk about who I think are the real contenders here later and whether I think Purdue fits in that category, but they have another huge upcoming game here on Thursday night against Michigan State and will definitely need to continue playing at their best to pull that one off and keep boosting their resume towards the end of the season. Indiana, on the other hand, I just thought they were severely outmatched in this one. They were just absolutely hammered on the glass, got out rebounded by 15, and with Purdue shooting the way that they did not shoot nearly efficient enough to keep this one close. They have another really big opportunity here left on their schedule against Michigan State as well next Sunday, but they're really going to need a win there, and that would be a huge win for the Hoosiers as well to get past this pretty big blunder here and blow out and boost their tournament resume towards the end of the season here as we obviously get much closer to Selection Sunday. Moving on to the absolutely loaded Saturday slate we had pointed out on Thursday's episode. The first game I had circled was the Creighton and St. John's game here, and not to keep patting myself on the back here, but this game went pretty much exactly how I thought it would and exactly how I previewed it on Thursday's episode. The Johnnies are just getting hot right at the right time here and have had a great run here in 2026. They would be undefeated in 2026 aside from that one loss to Providence on January 3rd, which seems like forever ago compared to how the Johnnies are playing right now. They are just really playing their best ball here and starting to trend up at the end of the year here, which is exactly when you want to be doing so. Creighton, on the other hand, I was really only interested in this game because of their huge win against UConn earlier on in the week. I thought maybe I had counted them out just a little bit too early, and maybe I was wrong on my comments about the Big East only having 3 tournament teams here, but think I was proven correct yet again here, watching Creighton put up another very unimpressive performance. Maybe they don't like to show up when I'm watching, I guess, but yeah, just another terrible performance from the Blue Jays. They only had 38 points 30 minutes into the game and shot an abysmal 32% from the field, which is just horrifying. Not a single Blue Jay even cracked double digits in a single stat category aside from minutes, which, again, is just extremely abysmal. One of the most telling stories of this game was the board discrepancy, which kind of seemed to be a common theme across the weekend here. They got out-rebounded, let me say this slowly, 44-18. They were out-rebounded by 26. Just a... I'm struggling to find words to describe how horrible of a game that was for Creighton and just how much I am out on this team. They are just nowhere near a tournament team, in my opinion. If they do make the tournament, I personally think they are going to get stomped in the first round. It's not like St. John's even had a great night. They shot 3 of 14 from deep and just 46% from the field. Not really that impressive of stuff to be getting blown out like Creighton did, but they did. I'll keep repeating myself until proven otherwise, but yeah, the Big East is a 3-team race. I really don't know if I would say anyone other than maybe Providence deserves to be a tournament team in the Big East, but yeah, St. John's has 2 awesome matchups coming up here against both of the other 2 top teams in the Big East in UConn and Villanova here coming up this week, so we'll definitely be tuning into those here, but we'll talk about those a little bit later down the show. Moving down the Saturday slate here, we had pointed out the Miami and Virginia game, and I was a little bit disappointed seeing how good of a game that Tennessee and Vanderbilt won. It looked like I had maybe chose the wrong game, but this one certainly delivered as well and was certainly well worth the watch. This Miami team, I think, is just really impressive. They don't really have a ton of talent, and what Jay Lucas is doing with this team, I think, is extremely impressive, but they just fight and claw for 40 minutes, and they really never roll over at any point in any game. I really like Shelton Henderson as well. He was committed to Duke, so maybe there's a little bit of bias there, but I was really excited for him to join this squad with the freshmen that we had coming in. But I think he's found a great fit with Miami, and he is really thriving there. Their 2 guards, Donaldson and Washington, were pretty solid as well, but Donaldson did not have a very good shooting night, shooting only 35% from the field. As for Virginia, I thought this was just a really impressive win for them. This Miami team, like I said, is definitely no slouch, and beating this team is certainly an accomplishment. They do seem to try and let everyone hang around with them, though, and not close the door. This is something that I kind of talked about earlier on in the year with that UNC game where they just kind of kept them at arm's distance the entire time until the end of the game where they just kind of blew it. But yeah, I thought this was a really solid win. They had 6 players in double figures with Jakari leading the way with 17. And Grunlow had a really impressive night as well, adding 12 points and 5 blocks, which I thought was really impressive for him. This Virginia team is just really solid and is a team that I do believe can give a lot of teams problems here in the tournament. I don't necessarily think that they're a contender to cut the nets down, but they are definitely a very solid team and have a really tough schedule here this week. They get NC State first, who has been playing much better recently aside from that blowout loss against Louisville. And then they get Duke in Cameron on Saturday. So another set of huge tests coming for the Hoos this week. Miami has a much different week on the other hand. They take on 2 pretty lackluster teams in the ACC here, but cannot afford a blunder or a loss in either one of those games if they want to continue to boost their resume for March Madness. Up next was the Arizona and Houston game, and this one obviously tipped off around halftime of that Virginia game, so it's kind of having to go back and forth between these two on both separate screens, but this game definitely did not go how I thought it would, and is not something that I saw coming, but just pretty much proves why Arizona is so dangerous. I had said on Thursday that without Pete, beating this Houston team would be a really tough task for Arizona, but they certainly answered the call here. Del Orso has been really impressive here for the Wildcats. He only averages about 9 points on the season and around 32% shooting from deep on the year, but in their last 3 games, he's averaging 16.3 and shooting almost 44% from deep. I think that's just really massive and a huge improvement for him as the season is going on, and he is playing really well at the right time here. He had another good game in this one, of course, putting in 22 with a 57% clip from the field, which was just really impressive. I thought Jaden Bradley was huge down the stretch for the Wildcats as well. He just hit a bunch of huge shots towards the end and was someone they relied on at the free throw line at the end of the game as well. Houston, on the other hand, just could not get it going on offense, and they were just pretty abysmal all day. It's almost a miracle they only lost by 7 points because looking at the stat sheets, it just really did not look like a good game from Houston, but I think that's just Kelvin Sampson for you. Houston shot below 36% from the field as a team and an even uglier 31% from deep. The only reason they kept this one close and kept from Arizona killing them pretty much was the boards. They did beat Arizona on the boards by 14, which I thought was really impressive. And again, the only reason why I think that this game was even close. Other than that, Arizona could have ran away with this one at any point, I believe. However, my opinion of both of these teams remains the same here. The Big 12 is really just an absolute juggernaut and is absolutely insane this year, and it's unfortunate that Toppin got hurt because this Big 12 tournament could really be special. I think it still will be, but that injury still has me really sour here. Moving forward, we're obviously going to be watching both of these teams here as they get towards the end of the year. They both have a ton of loaded games still yet to play at the end of the year here, and I am super excited to see how this Big 12 shapes up as we get to March. Moving down to the next game I had pointed out on Thursday's episode was this UConn and Villanova game. Now, I wasn't able to get my eyes on the second half in this one. I was too busy, unfortunately, smiling at my phone from 8:30 to 10:30 after that awesome Duke win. But I do still have it recorded, and I'll try to get my eyes on the second half of this one maybe later today after I'm done recording and editing. But it doesn't seem like I really missed much. Both teams in the first half went back and forth and was an awesome first half, like I said. When I had to change away at halftime, I was really worried that I was going to end up missing an awesome finish here in this one. But like I said, it looks like the second half was just not competitive at all. Nova came out immediately in the second half and scored only 9 points in the first 8 minutes of it and really allowed the Huskies to push their lead to double digits there. It seems like from there, it was pretty much an uphill battle all night for the Wildcats. I think UConn's loss to Creighton really did not bode well for Nova and did not play in their favor for this one. I don't necessarily like to continuously say if X team didn't win this game, then they would have lost this game, or if X team didn't lose this game, then they would have won this game. I don't necessarily like to continue saying that, but I do believe in momentum and teams bouncing back after tough losses. So I personally do believe in it. Whether you do or don't, I think is personal opinions. But yeah, I do think that momentum and responding after losses is absolutely a real thing here. Nova just shot terribly from both the field and from deep. They shot 41% from the field and 25% from three. I said in Thursday's episode that if Nova wanted to pull this one off, they were really going to need their trio of guards to show up in this one, and it really seemed like Perkins was the only one who decided to show up. Caden Lewis and Bryce Lindsey both really struggled the first time around against UConn, and it seems like that was a pretty similar storyline here in this one. However, this game does not really change much of my opinions on either of these teams here. I still thought that UConn was an elite team even after that tough loss to Creighton here earlier on in the week, and I still think that Nova is absolutely a tournament team here. However, they are going to need to bounce back here against a poorer Butler team before they turn their focus to St. John's again, as they are really going to need to pull that one off to potentially bolster their resume here at the end of the year. Moving down the slate, we have, of course, my favorite game of the weekend, and what a game it was. I think both of these coaches just earned a ton of respect around the college basketball world after this one. Playing such a loaded game this late in the year and out of conference, I think just takes a ton of confidence in the team that you built to be able to schedule that before the year. The best part is both teams absolutely showed up to play and set us up for an absolutely awesome game and a potential Final Four preview as well. It looked like right away we were actually going to get an offensive game in this one. They both put up 45 points combined in the first 10 minutes of this one. However, it really slowed down after that as both teams really started to settle in on defense. Both Duke and Michigan looked like they really wanted to run the ball right away. With both teams being elite at defense, it seemed like both coaches' game plans was to beat the defense down the floor before they can get set, which contributed to that really fast start. After that, though, it seemed like neither coach was interested in continuing that running match, and things really slowed down immediately after that. I had said on Thursday's episode that Duke was going to hold Michigan to their lowest total of the year, or one of their lowest totals of the year, and that was spot on. Duke held Michigan to 63 points, their lowest total on the year. This Duke team's defense is absolutely ridiculous. I still do not think enough people are talking about how impressive of a team this Duke team is, specifically on defense, but just in general and as a whole as well. They are going to be one of the highest rated KenPom teams in history by the end of this year. I truly do believe that. And again, I am a full believer in this team's ability to cut down the nets at the end of the season. Another thing I had said on Thursday's episode relating to Michigan's chances of pulling this one off, I had said Lendeborg and Cadeau would need to play well. Cadeau certainly did not. He was pretty awful all night, going 1 for 8 and putting up 8 points only due to 5 free throws. And Lendeborg, on the other hand, I'm not giving him any flowers. After that stunt he pulled in that post-game press conference, that dude can kick rocks. That was absolutely one of the most immature things I have ever seen in my life from a 23-year-old. He got asked about his matchup with Cam Boozer and basically just laughed it off as if Cam Boozer didn't belong on the court with him. Yeah, okay. Buddy, there's a reason he's going to be National Player of the Year and a top 5 pick, while you're going to be a 17th to maybe 15th pick as a 23-year-old. Get over yourself, dog. Duke needs to continue to push here as they get deeper into this mini gauntlet here that they have to end the year. They get a pretty easy game against Notre Dame here before it's a very big home game against UVA, where they cannot afford to drop one here and are going to need another huge win to continue to get this momentum into March here. The last game I had pointed out on this Saturday slate did not go how I thought it would, and that was BYU versus Iowa State. And like I said, this game did not go how I thought it would in the slightest. After patting myself on the back here for a couple games that I think I got spot on, this one I certainly did not get spot on at all. I had mentioned on Thursday's episode that I am pretty much all the way out on BYU. However, I thought this was an extremely impressive win from the Cougars. Without Saunders, I still don't like their chances to be able to rattle off multiple of these types of wins in a row here, which is what they're going to have to do in a setting like March Madness. But they certainly still prove that they are still a very dangerous team. The first half was very competitive and back and forth, but the second half was a completely different story, and BYU just pretty much controlled the entire second half there, in large part due to another incredible game from Dabansa. He was one assist shy of a triple-double here, putting up 29, 10, and 9 assists on almost 59% shooting from the field and 2 of 4 from 3. This was maybe his most impressive game all year, in my opinion. He was an absolute animal all night, and Iowa State had zero answers for him the entire night. He is really trying to make his case here for why he deserves to be the number one overall pick, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see who ends up going number one overall, but I think he is certainly making a great case for himself here recently. Iowa State, on the other hand, just did not show up ready to play at all and could not buy a bucket. They shot under 43% from the field as a team, 33 from deep, and got out-rebounded by 11. I said this before a while back after one of their pretty tough losses, but this Cyclones team just does not have any major paint presence here. There is no one down there that you are really worried about as a rim protector, and even on the glass, they're just very soft. If they want to cut down the nets, I think that is something they are going to need to figure out immediately. BYU, on the other hand, has a tougher game coming up against UCF. They will definitely need to pull that one off if they want to keep climbing here before March. Iowa State gets a lackluster Utah team before taking on Texas Tech at home. Even though Toppin is obviously out for the year, that Texas Tech team certainly showed they are not just going to roll over after their blowout win yesterday against Kansas State. So Iowa State will definitely need to be getting up and ready for this one. Moving on here, I did just want to spend some time talking about some of the teams that I think are actual contenders to cut down the nets here in April. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this section, but I did just want to give you guys a brief outline of who I do think are the contenders this year. And starting with Duke, this one I think is pretty obvious if you know me. Of course, I think the Blue Devils are a real contender to cut down the nets and think they just proved me right yesterday. Just a super impressive win and one of the biggest wins in program history here, in my opinion. This team is just trending up right at the right time here, and in my opinion, they are the best defensive team in the nation. Beating them in any game is going to be tough to do, but even when their shots aren't falling, their defense can carry them on almost any night, which I think makes them probably the favorite to cut down the nets as of right now. Michigan, I still think, is absolutely a contender as well. Despite that loss, I think that changed nothing for me about this team, and I certainly do not want to see this Michigan team again as a Duke fan. College basketball fans might want to see that rematch, but I am completely good off of that one. This team is certainly elite, and I really do not see anyone taking them out before the Elite Eight here in March. Next, I have Illinois. This is a team that's really struggled here recently, but I just think that they're the only team aside from Michigan in that Big Ten that can cut the nets down. They are certainly much more of a borderline team compared to Michigan in terms of that aspect, and I had to go back and forth here on whether to include them while omitting teams like Purdue, Nebraska, and Michigan State. But there's just something about this Illinois team that just gives me a lot more confidence in them than it does in the other three there. Moving down, I have Arizona. After that undermanned win against Houston, I think that they just reminded everyone how they are still absolutely elite. This team just has so many pieces in both the backcourt and the front court that just makes them a really dangerous team here. I think between all of the contenders, I think Arizona, Houston, Duke, and Michigan are almost in a tier of their own. Next, I have another team that I just mentioned here is Houston. Even though they had that rough loss yesterday to Arizona, this Houston team is still certainly built well enough to cut down the nets. With a guy like Flemings and adding him to such a great defensive team, I think they are even more dangerous than last year, which they just made the finals last year. So I think that is quite a hot take there. I don't think they're as good as they were defensively last year, but they are definitely still one of the best defensive teams in the nation, and I think they are a much better offensive squad as well. And, of course, with Kelvin Sampson at the helm, the sky is always going to be the limit for this Houston team. Up next, I have Iowa State. This is a team that I have went back and forth on here, but I just think that their shooting ability keeps them in this conversation pretty firmly. They have the best shooter in the nation in Momcilovic, and when he is hot, they are extremely tough to beat. Now, like I mentioned earlier, their paint presence does really concern me, and I think that they are another team that is on the cusp of being a contender, but I still do certainly think that they can do it. Kansas. Kansas is a team that I had been talking extremely high of all year, but they have taken a pretty hard stumble here recently. But with a guy like Peterson and a defensive juggernaut like Badunga, I certainly cannot count them out as a contender. Add in a great coach with Bill Self, and I think you have a legit contender to cut down the nets here. That loss to Cincy was really bad, but really did not change my mind on this team. I do think that they definitely need to start trending back up here, as it seems like they may have peaked a little bit too early, but I still expect them to at least get to the second weekend of March Madness here. And this might be controversial, but this is the last team that I have as a contender. I do not have many teams that I think can really cut down the nets here and win 6 in a row in March, but that would be Florida. This is the only SEC team that I think is even remotely a contender. I have been seeing a lot of people in college basketball media putting teams like Arkansas and Bama over Florida, and I'm just really starting to watch how many people actually watch college basketball, because I'm not sure how you watch the SEC and don't think that Florida is clearly clearly the best team in the ACC. It is not even an argument at all. And I do not understand where people are getting this whole Arkansas is better than Florida thing. Arkansas is not going to be able to compete with Florida. I feel very confident in that. I love Darius Acuff, but Florida's defense would give Arkansas so many problems. I do not think that Arkansas is nearly close to being a contender like Florida is, and I am really, really high on this Florida team. I really do think that they are very good and a legit contender to cut down the nets in March, and really am starting to wonder, like I said, how many people are actually watching this SEC league, because with the amount of teams that they have in the top 25 and top 20, I just really don't think that people are watching this SEC team, or SEC league, excuse me, and I think the SEC will be exposed in March aside from Florida. Moving on to the last section of today's episode, I, of course, did want to provide you guys with some more games to watch in another loaded upcoming week of college basketball here. And that will, again, start on Monday night with Louisville and UNC. Now, without Caleb Wilson, I am fully expecting a pretty convincing win by the Cardinals here. However, UNC will be definitely hungry for this one. They just beat Syracuse undermanned. And, of course, that's not really an impressive win. It shows that they are definitely not going to go back into a corner without Caleb Wilson here. Louisville has been a team that I have talked extremely highly on all year and have not been shy about how good I think they are. I still think that they're rivaling for the second best team in the ACC as of right now, but I would give that title to Virginia at the moment. If Louisville wants to win this one, their guards are going to have to dominate here between Brown and Conwell. I think that they're going to need to combine for at least 40 points between the two of them. However, on the other hand, if UNC wants a chance to pull this one off, they are going to need a great game from both of their guards, Dixon and Trimble. And I think Vesar is going to need to have an awesome game like he did against Syracuse as well. Like I said, I'm fully expecting Louisville to win this one and in a pretty fairly convincing manner, but I'm at least hoping for UNC to keep this one close. Obviously, I don't want them to win, but I would like to see them keep this close and make it for a competitive game here to start another great week of college basketball here. Up next, I have Houston and Kansas. Both of these teams are coming off some really tough losses here from this weekend. Though Houston's on paper looks much better, they definitely got dominated by Arizona in that one, in my opinion, just from watching that game. But the same thing goes for Kansas as well. They got pretty much dominated all night by a really weak Cincinnati team, though I do really like their coach, Wes Miller. Both of these teams are going to definitely need this one if they want to boost their seed line. Houston was able to climb into the 1 seed line here after that really impressive stretch that they just had, but they most likely just fell back down to the 2 seed line after that Arizona game. If they can get a huge win here, that will be a massive boost coming down the stretch here, and as seeding gets tighter towards Selection Sunday. If Kansas wants a chance to raise their seeding here as well to potentially a 3 line, they will definitely not be able to afford a loss in this one, I don't think. Hoping for an awesome game here, but if I had to take a side, I would give the edge to Houston in this one. I just think that they're most likely going to pull this one off. But being in Allen Fieldhouse, I think that that place is going to certainly be rocking, and it's definitely not going to be an easy one for Houston to pull off here. Up next, of course, if you know me, I have to watch this game, and that is the Duke and Notre Dame game. Although, if it is a blowout, I will shift my attention to the next game that I have circled here on the schedule. I'm not going to talk too much about this game just because I think it is what it is. Duke should run away with this one, but I just want to make sure that my boys aren't in for a stinker here after that massive win on Saturday. They certainly cannot afford to drop one to this really bad Notre Dame team. Notre Dame, like I said, is just really bad, but we are still Duke, and we will get everyone's best shot typically when we come to town. So definitely going to need to at least show up a little bit for this one. Although I just think they need to play their game here, and they should pretty much sleepwalk to a 15-plus point win. Up next, if this Duke game gets out of hand, I will immediately turn my attention to this one, and that is the NC State and UVA game. I will definitely have this one up on a separate screen while the Duke game is on as well, but mostly just to keep tabs on the score as I watch the Duke game. I typically like to watch all the Duke games with my full attention focused on them. However, I think this should just be another awesome ACC showdown and matchup here. Despite that blowout loss to Louisville, NC State has been playing great here recently, and UVA is in a very similar boat. They have been playing great ball recently here, and like I said earlier, look like the second best team in the ACC conference as well. UVA just got that big win over Miami this weekend, which I thought was really impressive, but they cannot afford to drop this one if they want to potentially get up to a 3 seed by Selection Sunday. NC State, on the other hand, they just need to keep stacking wins here, I think. They're pretty firmly in the field at the moment now, but they're hanging around to one of the lower seeds for at-large bids here. They could really use a win here to bolster their resume and add another huge win to their resume here coming towards March. Moving on, I have UCF and BYU circled here. And after that really impressive win over the Cyclones, I wanted to get another chance to look at the Cougars here against another borderline tournament team. UCF is definitely no slouch and will certainly be ready to play in this one as they are a very well-coached team. However, I think BYU needs this one much more than UCF and is going to need this one pretty badly here. Like I said, their seed line has really started to tank here recently as they lost 5 of their last 8. Although that Iowa State game was really impressive and exactly what they were looking for there and is going to help their cause as we get towards March Madness, they just cannot really afford many more losses here if they want to keep their seed line pretty high. I'll be looking at Debansa, obviously, in this one to take over and give us another show, but I'm certainly not going to count UCF out. They have been a very competitive team all year and have taken down some very good teams, so this is definitely one that BYU is going to have to be ready for, and they cannot afford another setback here if they want to keep boosting their seed line status. Moving on to Wednesday night, I have the St. John's and UConn game pointed out here, and of course, we're going to be getting eyes on this one. After UConn just took down Villanova on Saturday, this is clearly the two best teams in the Big East, I believe, and we get to see them face off here on Wednesday night. I am really excited for this game as both of these teams' coaches are elite and just really fun to watch. They're both pretty animated coaches as well. As a Duke fan, I'm obviously not the biggest fan of Hurley, and he's not the biggest fan of us, but I certainly respect him as a coach and think he is one of, if not the best coaches in America. This one should just be a really fun watch, and I like the Johnny's chances to potentially pull off an upset here. I just think that they have a really good chance to add another huge win on the road here, although I do think the Huskies are definitely going to want to stay on track here and pull off another huge win. However, you may have noticed I do not have this Husky team in my contender tiers. I just do not think that this team has enough to win it this year, especially after their recent play. I just think that there has been a lot of red flags here, but they are certainly one of the teams that I left off of that list that I think can really prove me wrong as we get closer to March Madness here. I might have to add them to that contender here or tier later on in the year here, but as of right now, I just do not have that level of faith in them. But like I said, after this one, my opinion might change, and I'm really looking forward to a really high-level matchup here out in the Big East. Staying on Wednesday night, I pointed out this A&M and Arkansas game, and we talked about this A&M team a while back here where I was saying that they deserved a little more respect than they were getting, and I was immediately proven wrong the following week, and honestly the next week after that as well. They dropped 4 in a row after I showed them all that love, but have kind of bounced back slightly here, getting 2 wins in a row. Obviously, I'm expecting a pretty comfortable win from the Razorbacks here, but wanted to give the Aggies at least another chance to impress me here. I think Arkansas is the other team in the SEC that is right behind Florida, but I still just do not think that they are a contender to cut down the nets here in April. With Acuff, though, he can certainly keep them in any game. Like I said, I fully expect an Arkansas win here, but if the Aggies want a chance to get back into the tournament contention, they really have to pull this one off. I really do not think that they can afford to lose this one, as it's the only ranked game that they have left on their schedule here, aside from the SEC tournament. So I really think the Aggies are going to need to pull this one off to potentially get back into the tournament field here, but I'm fully expecting Arkansas to continue their dominance as the second best team in the SEC. Moving on to the last game I have circled between now and Thursday's episode is later on Wednesday night. This one's going to tip off at 11 p.m., but that's going to be between Santa Clara and St. Mary's. This is another game that I had pointed out a while back when I was discussing the West Coast Conference and the teams that I thought were contenders in there. And I'm really excited to get an eye on this matchup. The winner of this one will take full control of second place in the West Coast Conference and will pretty much be in the driver's seat for the remainder of the year, most likely as well. There is a lot of implications in this game, especially on seeding for not only March Madness, but like I said, the WCC tournament coming up here at the end of the year. I think this is a really even game, and I'm really not sure which way I would lean in this one. However, I am just hoping for an awesome game between two impressive mid-majors here. However, that is all that I have for today's episode. We are blessed with another loaded week of college basketball coming up here this week, and it's just getting me even more excited here as we get closer to March Madness. But I appreciate everyone who decided to tune in to today's episode, and if you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, and join us back on Thursdays and Sundays for new episodes.